CodeBookRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
Alrighty, Talktainment Radio, welcome. We go where you go, the world's greatest radio. You are now in touch with the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby, and this is radio the way it should be heard. Now, to get in contact with the show, you can call 1-877-932-9766. You can also do it this way. Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, B-O-B-B-Y, at gmail.com. You can view and listen to the show by going to the YouTube channel, type in the word Talktainment, and then you will type in the word radio, scroll down to where it says Talktainment number 2, or write in Talktainment number 2. And when you do that, you'll be on the page and you can subscribe and like button. We would like for you to do that. You can also do it this way. Go to the TalktainmentRadio.com homepage, and at the very top of the page, you'll see a big sign that says Listen Live. You're right there. Listen Live. And also, the replay of the show, you can go to Facebook.com/Talktainment, and you have it all there. Okay, today being Wednesday, the 24th of April, 2019. Where did the time go for this month? We're going to continue our discussion that we had last week. Got a lot of calls, a lot of Gmails concerning the Codebook, and Mr. Fuller focused on focus, how we have to stay focused. And it is of my opinion that a lot of us, for whatever the reason, the distractions in life, we lose our focus and then it gets all messed up. But we're going to have Mr. Fuller address that. Today's title of the show is Reading the Codebook. And before you ask your question, whether you're speaking with Mr. Fuller or not, if you follow it, you have to ask this question. What does the Codebook have to say about that? And the reason why I say that is because it appears that some of you are not reading the Codebook if you, in fact, have the Codebook, which Mr. Fuller will speak about a quarter till the next hour, and it makes me wonder: do you read the book, or what does the book say in the form of his suggestions? We'll discuss that, coming up here. Okay, what does the code say, Mr. Fuller? Good morning to some. I'm going to introduce Mr. Neely Fuller and present to others Mr. Neely Fuller. Mr. Fuller, good morning, and how are you this morning?
Good morning. I'm still learning.
You've always mentioned throughout this program, and the programs that I've been with you, about following a code. Mr. Fuller, why is it so important that we follow a code? And in particular, we're speaking of the compensatory code system concept, but why is it important to follow and focus in on a code?
It's important because this is the only way that anything gets done that's successful. Everything in the universe that's been done by people or creatures that has been, quote-unquote, successful has been done, if it's done consistently, according to a code. A code is very well allied. It's connected with consistency and success in consistency. In other words, you keep doing something over and over again, and every time you do it, it works. And when you don't do it, it doesn't work. So a code, if you want to use it within that context, within that definition, is something that every time you do it, it works. I mean, fire will burn, water is wet. You can kind of depend on water to be codified, that water will behave like water. Fire will behave like fire. And these are things that people discovered, whomever the first people were on the planet, among what historians call the primitive people and whatnot. they would try something, and it wouldn't work. And then they would try something else, and that wouldn't work. And then they would try something else, and that wouldn't work. And then they would try something, maybe after 15 different tries of different things, how to use woodwork, how to use stone, and they say, that seems to work. So anything that works, when you do it, becomes, you might say, codified. It becomes a code because it works. It serves the purpose that you are trying to get the purpose served. And you can reach that purpose by going through the same motions each time. It's a certain way to roast a chicken. Otherwise, I mean, you can't roast a chicken by frying a chicken. That's a different process. And you say, well, do you use the same process to fry a chicken as you do to roast a chicken? Say, oh, no. Roasting, that's one code. Frying is another code. That's all it is. And I've given, it may be kind of ragged the way that I'm putting it, but I hope that that's understood. That's basically what a code is.
Okay.
And when it comes to trying to solve the race problem, in my opinion, and that's why I call it a compensatory code. Compensatory meaning making up for what's missing. That's what compensation means. Like unemployment compensation.
Mm-hmm.
When you get unemployment compensation, it means you're making up for what's missing. And what is missing? What is missing is you're not employed. So therefore you get something that ties you over until you can get employed in something that you really want to be doing. Of course, according to the code that I've written, all people are employed, including even people who are what you call unemployed. It's just that you're employed doing something constructive, or you're employed doing something non-constructive. And that itself is a code.
Yes, sir.
What's the difference between unemployment and employment? Well, there's no such thing as being unemployed. Even when people are dead, they are employed. Why? Because their dead bodies are still being processed. They're doing something. They're deteriorating. They are refurbishing the soil or something. They're going back to the earth. A dead body is actually employed. So there's really no such thing as unemployment. And you're employed doing something constructive or non-constructive.
Mm-hmm.
That's a code.
Okay. All right. With that being said, 179329766 is the number that you call to get in contact with the show. Let's go to the Gmails, and this says this. This comes from Frames. Says this, Mr. Fuller, since punishment for murder is death, according to you then, Mr. Fuller, who equates abortion with murder, should women who have undergone it kill themselves in order for justice to prevail?
No. No, see, that's what that's what I mean by compensatory and what your objective is. The whole objective is to replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice. Well, we don't have justice. We can't even practice justice. We can head toward it in this system, but the system itself is built to disallow justice. It's built so that justice will not exist. You can't have justice and the system of white supremacy on the same planet at the same time. That just won't work.
Mm-hmm.
So you automatically are always in an unjust and non-stable, correctly stable situation. Everybody on the planet, because you have an unjust government governing the entire planet, the behavior of all people, either directly or indirectly, in all 9 areas of activity, all the time. Economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and of course war, which the system of white supremacy is the greatest wartime condition ever inflicted upon the people of the entire planet called Earth in recorded history. So you can't have justice. So therefore, you have murder. You have everybody doing things directly, indirectly, all the time that are not correct. There's no such thing as getting it the way that it ought to be. If you have two or three things that are correct, you have two or three things, or maybe one thing that's not correct. So the sum total of it is you're feeding into a system, regardless, that's an incorrect system because the system itself is incorrect. The system of white supremacy is the only stable and efficient, and you might say qualified for the term government among the people of what we call the planet Earth. There's no other government other than that. There are clusters of people who are called governments. Even an individual person can be called a government because you do govern what you do. You can move your left hand or your right hand. You can walk into a room and sit down in a chair. That's a form of government. You're making decisions. That's what government is, making decisions and then acting on the decisions made. But nobody makes the decisions that are as powerful as those white people. Not all white people, but those white people who are the smartest and most powerful. Nobody makes decisions that have proven to be as powerful as the decisions that they make, not only for themselves, but for all people who are classified as non-white. And that's what you call white supremacy.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All righty. 1-877-932-9766 is the number that you can call to get in contact with the show and address your questions to Mr. Fuller. This comes from the Gmails, comes from Mr. Reeves. He says this, Mr. Fuller: since our establishment here in America, black people have done remarkable things despite being oppressed. For instance, musicians like Louis Armstrong, John Coltrane, Ella Fitzgerald made music that innovated and today is admired in professional circles and academia across the world. It is important for the self-esteem and motivation of black people to know the great accomplishments we've made despite our oppression. Or is it more important we focus on practicing a code that helps improve our current situation, whether we know history or not?
Absolutely. History is just whatever happened 5 minutes ago, or whatever happened 2 seconds ago, or 1 second ago. History is whatever has happened. So it comes down to, what do you use history for? Primarily, if there are things to be corrected, you use history to teach you the difference between what is the correct thing and constructive thing to do and what is the non-constructive thing that you avoid doing. That's basically what the purpose for history. It's not for bragging rights. You don't need that. We are taught that. People are taught that. Well, you got to have something to brag about to boost your self-esteem. Your self-esteem comes from solving problems.
Yes, sir.
You just look at a problem and you back up off of it and you study it and then you figure out how to solve that problem. That's where your self-esteem is supposed to come from, if you solve that problem constructively. Because there's always one of two ways to go, just two. If you're not going one way, you're going another. And that's constructive, non-constructive. That's all a baby has to know when it comes into the world. The difference between doing something constructive and something non-constructive. Now, a person might look at a baby and say, you haven't been here no time. And so what do you know? And so you don't have any history. You haven't been here long enough to have a history. You were just born. But the baby says, I got a history of standing up in that crib because yesterday I didn't know how. And today I know how. So I can hold on to the side of the crib. But I didn't know how to do that yesterday. All right? So I'm making what you call progress. I'm learning how to stand. I'm learning, maybe in a few days or a few weeks or whatever, how to walk. All right? And that will be my history. And all I have to do is just use my history to learn. If I learn how to walk yesterday, I will use what I learned yesterday to walk today. And that doesn't stop. It's the same with every creature on the planet. That's just the mathematics of it. So if we're talking about the framework of history and self-esteem and all that, well, the white supremacists, they tell us, well, you got to know this. In order for you to get justice, you have to know your history. I can't give you justice. Well, I know enough about my history to know that I'm being mistreated right this minute. All right? That's all you really have to say. Say, well, hey, you're not qualified because you don't know enough about history and whatnot. I'm not qualified for what? To be treated correctly? I don't have to have a history to be treated correctly. I mean, that's supposed to happen from day one, the day that I take a breath, the day that everybody takes a breath. Don't mistreat people. Now, how much history do you have to know in order to know not to mistreat people? But see, they got all these different phony qualifications. They, meaning the white supremacists, primarily, and we pick it up and make the same criteria. Well, you got to go and study all about, who built the pyramids in order for you to be able to walk across the room. Otherwise, you can't walk. You can't talk unless you know who built the pyramids and how many people were involved in it and what their names were, what their grandmother's names were, and where they are buried now. See, this is the white supremacists, see, and they look at each other and they wink at each other when they tell black people to go off on these safaris and whatnot and try to, learn this and learn that. They tell us what we ought to learn in order to qualify for just one thing, not being mistreated. See, that's what we have. That's what we mean by focus, since that's the subject of this talk today. Focus. All it is about, you're either being treated correctly or non-correctly. Now, everybody's supposed to be treated correctly. We're supposed to have justice, balance between people. Justice, the compensatory definition, one that I gave it, is guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guarantee that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. 24/7, everywhere, all the time, in every area of activity. Guarantee that no person is mistreated. That's the compensatory definition for justice.
Yes.
That's number one. Guarantee that no person is mistreated. Got to guarantee it. And number two, guarantee that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. Underline constructive. Because some people will ask for help. And you say, well, how can I help you? You need help? How can I help you? Well, I need another snort of cocaine. You say, well, now, that's help. That's helping you. But is that constructive? Is that constructive help? Yes or no? There's only one of two ways to go in any move that you make on this planet. Minute by minute, second by second. Constructive, non-constructive. That's all we need to get straight. We don't need a whole bunch of fancy words to pretty it up and all like that. Hey, I'm either being mistreated or I'm not.
Yes, sir.
And hey, I'm either doing something constructive or I'm not doing something constructive. Which is it?
Yes.
And that's it.
That's it.
All that stuff about self-esteem and and what kind of clothes you put on and whatnot, and whether or not you meet this type of standard and that type of standard. The white supremacists are always setting types of standards and whatnot. Hey, are you treating people correctly? And are you helping people that need help the most?
Yes, sir.
That's it.
Okay. TalkTameRadio.com is a 24/7 no-charge worldwide broadcasting facility with hosts delivering on various topics such as news and lifestyle, sports, law, health, wellness, religion, and politics. Here's a few shows that I'm going to share with you right now. Wiggins World with Stacey Wiggins. New Money with Drew and Janae. And also the Quay Morgan Hill Show. Now, all of these programs are exclusive to TalkTameRadio.com. And to get a sample of each one of these programs or the other programs that Talktainment Radio has, all you need to do is go to the TalkTainmentRadio.com homepage. And at the top line, you'll see where it says Programs. Give it a click, and then a list of all the programs will come up. And all you have to do is select which one that you would like to sample it, to see what it's like. So actually sample all of them if you'd like, but sample one and see if you like it. You may and you may not, but you're not going to know until you sample it. So do that, and all that is an exclusive from TalkTainmentRadio.com. Radio the way it should be heard. My name is Mr. Bobby, and I am the co-host on the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Today is April 24th, 2019, and our discussion is talking about the Codebook, and then we're focusing in on being focused. What does the Codebook have to say concerning your question? Did you read it? Did you look at it? There are 9 different areas that Mr. Fuller, of people activity that Mr. Fuller focuses on, and usually, well, your question is going to be within those 9 areas, and I can almost guarantee that before this program is over, he will name each one of those 9 areas, usually 2 or 3 times a program. So give it a listen. Okay, from the Gmail, so let's do this. This comes from George. He says this, Mr. Fuller, I'm going to be in trouble for this one, but I gotta spit it out. Mr. Fuller says that anything negative that affects the masses of black people is always the fault of white supremacists. Wrong. It is our fault. Why? We always have a choice when they do what they do, and we almost always react in a negative, emotional way, resulting in a negative result through our disunity. The devil is always going to make you an offer. It is up to us to never accept it. The story of Faust is all about this. Could you comment on this, please, Mr. Fuller?
Well, my comment is right out of the textbook itself. There are 4 things. I don't know what page it is right now, but it's in there, and it goes like this. That covers just what, from the compensatory code view, it covers what was just stated, and that is, many people have been harmed who should not be harmed. I'm going to name 4 things now. Number 1 is, many people have been harmed who should not be harmed. Number 2, many people are to blame. That includes black people, people, males, females, etc., etc., etc. Many people are to blame for the harm that's being done. Number 3, the people who are most to blame are hiding in plain sight. All right? And number 4, the people who are most to blame are all white supremacists. And all of the evidence shows this. That's the response to that. The remarks that were made, that's the codified response. Many people have been harmed who should not be harmed. People are being harmed all over the planet, every day, every minute. I mean, massive harm. People everywhere. I mean, newspapers are just full of what? Reporting people mostly who have been harmed. not have been harmed, and in ways that the harm should not have happened at all. Everything from people blowing up cities to auto accidents. You're being harmed. You know, somebody goes through a red light, that's harm. And you have a major collision. A lot of young people in the back seat of the car, in that car seats, and they're killed because the crash was so horrendous. They didn't survive, even with car seat belts on and all of that, and child care seats. People are being harmed. Many people have been harmed who should not be harmed. Number two, many people are to blame. Absolutely. White and non-white. Number three, the people who are most to blame are hiding in plain sight. And then number four is the clincher. The people who are most to blame are all white supremacists. Why? Because they run the entire planet. That's why you always put most of the blame in anything that happens that shouldn't happen on those who have taken charge and told everybody else what to do, when to do it, how to do it, what they'll have, what they won't have. And that's what the white supremacists do all over this planet called Earth.
Okay.
They tell all people of color what to do, where to go, when, what kind of work to do. So whoever's in charge, you know, you go to a nursery, which is what they have made black people, just citizens, you might say, of a nursery, if you can call it that, if we're being nursed correctly, which is not true. We're being nursed, but incorrectly. So you go into the nursery, and the children, which is what black people have become in the system of white supremacy, they're doing all kinds of crazy things. You don't grab the children. I mean, that's the long way around. You go and right to the head nurse of the nursery and say, what's going on here?
Yes.
You know, it's too much disorder. You're running the place. These people wouldn't be conducting themselves the way that they're conducting themselves if you weren't orchestrating it or allowing it to happen. I mean, you taught them, you were raising them. I mean, you said you were in charge. Well, you're in charge of this mess.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what you have made of these people, a mess.
A mess. Mm-hmm.
That's what I am, a mess in the system of white supremacy, any way that I choose to look at it. Because I am not doing the correct things. You can't do the correct things in the system of white supremacy, even when it looks like you're doing the correct thing. I'm trying to, but they won't allow it.
They won't allow it. Okay. Let's go to the phone lines. Caller, you're on with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. Good morning, and what is your question?
Good morning, gentlemen. My name is Richard from Oakland. First, thank you, Mr. Fuller. I feel like your work is the next step in defeating this racism and installing justice thing, along with Amos Wilson and Dr. Wellsting. So my question is about racist labels. What are the advantages, disadvantages, rewards, or caveats if, let's say, the United States were to wake up and decide, we're not going to use racist labels? Black, white, Asian, Mongoloid, Negroid, none of that exists anymore. Just simply because there's no scientific basis for it.
So
I mean, is that something that needs to happen, you know, at now or sometime in the future as we dismantle racism?
Well, in the code book, there are three classifications of people when you talk about race and racism, according to what I've written. I've looked at the classifications over the years, and right now it's supposed to be 21, I think. It might be more. As the last census, I think, that I looked at, it was 21 categories, none of which makes sense to me. That is, when you put them all together, or even some of them individually, make no sense at all. Like Pacific Islander or some other race. What would you be looking for if you were looking for a person of some other race. I mean, you walk into a room and you say, I came here to look for a person. And they say, okay, well, what is the racial classification of the person? Someone will ask you that. And you say, some other race. Some other race other than what? What do you mean, some other race? What would the person look like? What are some of the characteristics? Give me something other than some other race. Well, some other race. That's the person, you know. We have several people here who are of some other race. And you say, well, can you point them out and what makes them some other race? That's their official classification, some other race? Yeah. You know, say, well, who would I be looking for? Well, look for some other race. That's what I just told you. I keep repeating myself, some other race. Now, that is a category. And then you have another category called Pacific Islander. What does that mean? I don't know. What qualifies you to be a Pacific Islander? I've been in the Pacific, and I've been on islands in the Pacific. You know, I've been to Guam, spent about maybe 2 hours there in a flight going back and forth to Japan and whatnot. So I was on a Pacific island, an island in what they call the Pacific Ocean. Now, during the time that I was there, that makes me qualified to be a Pacific Islander, I guess. But a person say, oh, no, that doesn't qualify you to be a Pacific Islander. I mean, you know, you spent 2 hours in Guam on a tarmac, in a plane. You didn't even set foot. Yeah, but the plane is sitting on the tarmac, and I'm on a Pacific island. And so what are we talking about here? And what has that got to do with anything anyhow? See what I mean? I mean, what? Yeah, see, and on and on and on. So in the textbook for victims of white supremacy, to cut right to the chase, I said, when you talk about race, white, non-white, and white supremacists, that's it. Anything outside of that, you're wandering in the wilderness and you're not having focus. That is the focus. White people, non-white people, and white supremacists. You have to be white, though, in order to be a white supremacist. And that's what we are dealing with, because there's a reason for these classifications. And that's the question we should always ask. What's the reason for all these classifications? Whether it's 21 of them, or, like I said, 3 of them. You're supposed to be accomplishing something. Why be a member of a race if you're not accomplishing something? And so what is race for? Well, in the Codebook, I say race is racism. So everybody should be against people being classified by race. Now, if I get the caller's drift that just made this call, that's heading in the correct direction. Who thought up this idea of race? What are you racing against? They say human race. Why not just say, like I say in the Codebook, human being, which we don't have in the system of white supremacy. You can't have people who are humane, because we are in a inhumane system, a non-humane system. People are being mistreated. That is not humanity. So when you have a world government based on mistreatment, you don't even have a human classification. We are beings, but we are not human beings, because we are not humane. And why is it we are not humane, according to logic and the code? Is because we mistreat people. And we glorify the mistreatment of people. This is why black people run around all up and down the streets in every city and all over the world and whatnot, gun in hand, bang, 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 fall down, you're dead. All right? It's been glamorized. Killing people is glamorized in the system of white supremacy. They teach us this nonsense. Agreed. And we buy into it wholesale and pass it on from generation to generation. Mm-hmm. And I hope I'm not wavering from the point here, but the point is you got 3 classifications in order to do what? Why did I inaugurate those classifications? It's to get rid of the whole concept of race and have universal man, universal woman as individual people who have characteristics that qualify each and every person on the planet to be a universal man or a universal woman, and with the best characteristics that a human being can possibly have in all 9 areas of activity. That should be the goal. But this thing about race is racism.
Okay.
And that's why I've said black people were told that we were members of a race. When did we join? We didn't join any race. The white supremacists came to us and said, you're black, and you're a member of the black race. We didn't know nothing about that. I mean, we said we were members of tribes and all like that, but race, what are you talking about? And that's how we got blindsided, because they invented something called race and racism, so that they could do what? Mistreat people on the basis of color. That's what.
Yes.
They are the usual suspects. They are the inventors.
Okay. Thank you, caller from Oakland, California. Thank you so much for calling. TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go. Download the TalkTainmentRadio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. My name is Mr. Bobby. I'm the co-host on the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. And we are discussing on this day, the 24th of April, 2019, we are discussing the reading of the Codebook and what does the Codebook have to say concerning your question. And we are focusing in on being focused. But before we do that, this is very important. You need to get you really do need the Codebook. I don't get a dime for saying or promoting Mr. Fuller's book. That's not it. But in order to follow and understand the suggestions that are made that Mr. Fuller makes, you need the Codebook. And at this time, we're going to have Mr. Fuller discuss the Codebook, how you can get it, and any pertinent information concerning the book. Mr. Fuller?
Yes, you can get the book, the basic updated book, Revised Expanded Edition 2016, updated from 1984, by going to producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com. Producejustice.com. And what will come up on the screen is a brief description of the basic code book, long title, the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, but it has a more simplistic title, complimentary title. I hear voices in the background.
Okay. All right, go ahead now.
Textbook, workbook for thought, speech, and/or action for victims of racism. And racism is described as white supremacy. There's no other form of racism other than white supremacy. The white supremacists will say, like I said earlier, that there are many, many different races of people, and we're racing against something, racing against each other mostly, and all like that. But that's something that the white supremacists put in people's minds. And they do the classifying. Yes, it's the white supremacists that do all the classifying. That's why the classifications keep changing. They changed them. So, you just say white, non-white, white supremacists. And this is what the book is designed to do, get rid of racism, period. And since there's only one form of racism, and that is the system of white supremacy, you just get rid of that and replace it with what? The most logical thing, justice. Since white supremacy is about non-justice, maintaining the entire planet under mistreating people based on color. That's not just. So the book is about that. Go to producejustice.com, and there's also an addition to the book about how to use words like we're using now. Call things by the names that they ought to be called. Like in the last program last week, that word America and the United States. We got to get that straight in our minds, what we're talking about when we say United States and when we use the word America. It's very important that that word be used correctly. What is an American? What is not an American? When is an American an American? Is there any such thing as an American? These questions should be answered. You hear slogans like, make America great again. And then everybody starts throwing things at each other and snatching people's caps off if they're wearing one saying, make America great again, rather than, in the codified procedure, ask questions about those 4 words. Make America great again. That's all you really have to do. Just say, okay, I'm with that, or I'm not with that, depending on what you mean when you say, make America great again. So let's get into the question thing. I might have 3 or 4 dozen questions and counting about just those 4 words. We might sit and talk about 6 weeks on what those 4 words really mean when it comes to what? The 9 areas of activity, that's what, and who it applies to, and when, and where, and under what circumstance. What are we talking about here? See, it just calls for questions, not for name calling and throwing things before you even get the question, before the questions are even asked. Codification is about questions and answers, because questions and answers have proven to be the way to solve all problems. No exceptions to that.
Okay.
Go to producejustice.com.
All righty. Producejustice.com. Okay, 24th of April, 2019, and we are speaking about focus in the Codebook. Have you asked, or did you consult the Codebook before the Compensatory Codebook, rather, before you ask your question? Did you really do that, or are you just asking a question just to be asking or to be heard all over the world? But anyway, we have a caller on the line. Caller, go ahead. You're on with Mr. Fuller. Please turn your radio down if you have it up. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Mr. Fuller?
Yes, ma'am.
How you doing, Mr. Fuller?
I'm still learning.
Right, I'm still learning too, Mr. Fuller. I really appreciate hearing your voice. I thank you for everything that you do for us. And I know the topic is constructive health. And I was just calling because I was listening to the other callers call in. And it seems to me that you need a little constructive help. Because if some callers calling in, your book says that the person that needs the most help is supposed to get the most help, right?
Correct.
Seems like you need a little help. Because I wanted to ask you, how do you deal with our people calling in and saying different things that's not respected to you? It's not respected at all. How do you deal with that?
How do you deal with people who do what?
How do you deal with the callers that call in and they're not being humane?
Oh, I haven't experienced that according to my own evaluation. Of course, none of us are humane. Neely Fuller is not a human being. You can't be a human being in the system of white supremacy. So what I do is just try to do the correct thing, try not to harm anybody. And so none of the callers that I have, not a single one, has done any harm to me in my own evaluation. No one has harmed.
It just seems like they're not being respectful. And I think you being
they're not being what now? Let me get these words straight. They're not being what?
It just seems like that they're not. It sounds to me like they're not being very respectful.
Oh, respectful. Well, let's deal with that. Well, according to what I have written myself, It's impossible for anybody to give me respect. That can't be done anyway. Respect.
Okay.
And there's another word that goes before the word respect, according to the code. And that word is, it's a four-letter word. S-E-L-F.
Okay.
Self-respect. Now,
Yes, sir.
self-respect is what I give to myself. That's the only type of respect that's worthy of the term respect. Whenever you say respect, you're talking about self-respect. So self-respect comes from yourself. Now, what is the definition, the compensatory definition for self-respect? All right, according to the code, and it's in the code book, self-respect is, or respect itself is, just one thing: refusing to lie to yourself. Don't tell yourself lies. You're throwing respect out the window. There's no respect involved nowhere when you go around telling yourself things that are not true, that you know are not true.
Okay.
Now you have lost self-respect. And you don't ever, another thing about respect, use of the word respect. Words are very important. You never ask anyone to respect you. There's three things you don't ask for. You never ask for respect, you never ask for an apology, and you never ask for love. Ever.
Okay.
From anybody. Ever. Don't let those words ever come out of your mouth that you ask somebody to respect you. Respect comes from yourself. It doesn't come from somebody else. Other people can be discourteous and all like that. That's on them. That has nothing to do with you. You don't care what they say. Let them shout, curse, throw things at the wall, whatnot. I mean, that's their business. And that's a part of what you call compensatory conversation control. Okay? Yes.
Yes, sir.
See, if you beg somebody for respect, please respect me. Please apologize to me. Please love me. These things, for one thing, respect only comes from yourself, and apologies and love is something that people give voluntarily. Those other two things, apologies and love. You never ask anybody for an apology. Why? According to logic. Because it doesn't mean anything if you have to ask for it.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, it's when people come to you and say, I apologize for what I said to you the other day. That's when it has value.
Okay.
When you have to beat a person over the head and say, apologize to me, or I'm going to inflict injury on you, I'm going to say terrible things about you, or I'm going to do something to you, you better apologize. But the person say, okay, I apologize. I apologize for slavery, all right? I apologize for all the things I'm going to do to you next week or this evening. And in fact, I will load you up with apologies. I mean, and you'll have them in advance. How many do you need?
All righty. Got to leave it there because we have to close this hour. TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio the way it should be heard. Stay tuned for the second hour. That's the donate hour. Don't forget to donate to the second hour so that we can continue the great work that's going on. TalkTainmentRadio.com. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio.
The most important question in all racial matters is why. One should always ask it.
Radio, the way it should be heard.
You got the power. The world's greatest radio. TalkTainmentRadio.com. Talktainment Radio, worldwide sound. TalkTainmentRadio.com. We give you a reason to come. the world's greatest radio. We give you a reason to stay. Radio, the way it should be heard. You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guest and not necessarily those of TalkTainmentRadio.com, the management, the staff, or K&E World Network, LLC.
Live call-in talk show. Dial 1-877-932-9766 and join the conversation here on TalkTainmentRadio.com.
This is the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio, the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go, down on the world's greatest radio, and now you are in touch with the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby, and this is Radio the Way It Should Be Heard. To get in contact with the show by the phone, 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, B-O-B-B-Y, at gmail.com, and probably I will not get to it, but you know, it depends on whatever they send up to me. But anyway, that's how you do that. If you're listening live, you can do that. A YouTube channel, yeah, go ahead. YouTube channel, type in the word Talktainment, and then type in the word radio, scroll down to Talktainment number 2, you're there. We would prefer you go to the TalkTainmentRadio.com homepage, and all you have to do is click Listen Live, and you're right there. Both of those sites, make sure you hit the subscribe and like button. And then you can hear the replay of the whole program if you'd like. You can go to Facebook.com/Talktainment. You're right there. Okay. We are, this is the donate hour. So listen, seriously, we need you to donate for the second hour of the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller. You like it, we enjoy doing it and getting the word out, but you need to fork up some of that cash. Please, ma'am, please, sir, please do that. Okay, we are discussing here on the 24th of April, 2019. Do you read the book? Do you have the book? Do you read the book? You have a question from Mr. Fuller. Before you ask your question, what does the book say? What does the code have to say about that? Mr. Fuller, the last caller was talking, asked several different questions, but one of the things that came out, you said something about respect, and it brought to mind this happening now in the movie Harlem Nights, in the particular scene where Della Reese's character beat down Eddie Murphy. I think his name was Quick in the movie. And she was on top of him, and I mean, she was whooping him pretty good. And then as she was beating him, she said, and the next time you disrespect me or whatever, I'm gonna beat you down again. She used another superlative, but anyway, she did that. Is that respect?
I can't make a critique of the movie. I haven't seen the movie.
Oh, okay.
Even if I had seen it, from the scene that you just said, well, not according to the code. See that? But that would come under VGQ if that's the way she chooses. See, everything that I have written is just a suggestion. It doesn't say that it's not dictatorship. I can't dictate to anybody. I have no business even trying to do that, even under the best of circumstances. Nobody should dictate. People should give people choices and, or just mix in the form of suggestions. That's all. That's all the compensatory code is. You select what makes sense to you.
Okay.
Now, the people who have heard me this morning say that respect only comes from yourself. It's impossible for it to come from somebody else. That's according to the code.
Okay.
But if you say, well, I ain't paying no attention to the code, I'm going to go around and make everybody in the world respect me. I mean, ain't nobody going to ever disrespect me. And if they try to disrespect me, or if I think they're disrespecting me, I'm going to do what we've been taught you should do when somebody disrespects you.
Oh, yes.
You inflict punishment on them.
Well, that's what
In fact, you kill them.
That's what she did.
You hunt them down and kill them because they disrespected you.
Yes. That's what she did in the movie, in that Eddie Murphy's character, Quick, made a comment about the door was coming up short. You know, it was a house of prostitution, and he asked, well, why is the door always coming up short? And she took offense to that, and then she beat him down or beat him up, whatever, and then he, of course, threatened to shoot off her pinky toe after all that happened. But anyway, she felt disrespected, so I guess that's the way she handled it. I'm not sure, but anyway, you didn't see the movie, so you don't know. Okay, let's go to the phone lines. Caller, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please.
Mr. Fuller?
I'm here.
My question is, a lot of terrorism, as far as I'm concerned, I'll call it terrorism, when we see black men and women being beat and harmed on television. I've seen enough of that. I really don't want to see any more. Have to just avoid looking at it. It's hurtful. And I wonder, do you think it's constructive or non-constructive to continue to watch that? And I have another question after that.
Oh, it's constructive to watch anything that's happening on a planet where you inhabit with other people. Why? Because you learn by everything that you're looking at. And what do you learn? You learn, first of all, according to the code, whether what you're looking at is something that should be done or shouldn't be done, because they fall in one of two categories. It's not the one. It's going to be one or the other. Constructive, non-constructive. So then you try to figure out what to do about it if you're going to do anything at all, which you should be trying to solve every problem that is presented to you. That's why you are exposed to the problem. If the problem is something that you become aware of, then it becomes a part of your, according to the code, a part of your duties to look at that problem and try to think of a way to solve that problem. I put it in my book, and I could be in error. The reason that people are on this planet, this is a conclusion I came to many years ago. People are put on this planet to solve problems. Now, why did I come to that conclusion? Because we have problems. Whatever created the universe and created people also produced problems and presented us with those problems. So actually, it's just like church bingo. You're given a card, and or a lottery house bingo, a bingo game in somebody's back porch or whatnot. If you're familiar with the game called bingo, each person is given a card. So each person is given an assignment by whatever created you as a person. That's a reasonable and a logical concept. And you say, why do I have all these problems? Because your creator gave you these problems. Well, why would the creator give me problems? Now, the answer to that is, I don't know. But you know that you're here, and you know that you have problems. You have problems. Not only just looking at other people's problems, they got problems, and you have problems. But you handle the problems that are right there in front of you. That's how you know what your assignment is. In other words, you work on the card that you're given. You're given a set of problems, so that's your assignment. Solve these problems. The Creator may be putting us to a test. I don't know. Because the Creator, something as awesome and as powerful as whatever created everything that you see, including ourselves, is powerful enough to produce people who don't have problems. The Creator could have very easily done that. But the Creator, for some reason, saw fit that we would be presented with problems. We were born into the world just full of problems. So rather than run from them, which you can't, because if they're your problems, they'll catch up with you. You can't escape them. Okay, so after you try to run from them, which is a solution to some problems, and if it works, that means then that's not a problem for you to solve, and or you have solved the problem by moving away from the problem, all right? But if it's a problem that keeps following you everywhere you go, then you have to turn around and say, hey, this must be my assignment to solve this problem, because I couldn't solve it by trying to run away from it, because I found out I couldn't run away from it. It follows me wherever I go. So that means that's my assignment. And I got to figure out how to go about solving it and spend my time doing it. So we're supposed to be problem-solving people. Okay. That's what we are here for.
Okay. What's your second question, ma'am?
Second question. Thank you, Mr. Fuller, for that answer. Question number 2, on page 1 of the Revised Expanded Edition, page 1, you have a heading, Racism, a Basic Perspective. Okay. You make comments about midway through the page, down the page, it says cause and effect, effect and cause, but then you repeat it, and then it says constructive and non-constructive, but then you repeat it. Can I ask, what is the purpose of saying it twice, or was that a typo?
No, there are some typos in the book, but that's not one of them. The purpose for that is repetition. The fact that you even brought it up, it stood out to you. See, that's why I did it that way. I repeated it because I knew that would get people's attention. And when you get people's attention, they may remember what you said. If you're saying whatever it is you're saying, you get their attention, and they'll focus on it, depending on how you say it. And so I chose to say it that way: constructive, non-constructive, cause and effect, effect and cause, effect and cause, cause and effect, repetition.
Yes.
Like in the first grade, which we all are. In the field of counter-racism, we have to have a lot of repetition in order to do what? Learn how to do what? And that is the one word we've used throughout this entire program this morning: focus.
Focus, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
You can get
Thank you,
focused
Mr.
by
Fuller.
repetition.
Thank you, Mr. Bobby.
You're welcome. Thank you. Mr. Fuller, before we get off the page, and she did bring out a very good point, read that last part right there where it starts off with everything that a person, I think that might need to be brought out. Good question, ma'am. Could you read that, Mr. Fuller? They'd like to hear your word, or hear you say it.
Okay, that's on page
Yeah, page 1. Mm-hmm. Everything, starts with everything that every person. See it?
All right, I have my book right here in front of me. Let me get to page 1 here.
Yeah, almost at the bottom.
Right. I write so much, I don't.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Almost at the bottom.
Yeah,
everything that every person and every creature does or does not do is at all times either constructive or non-constructive in effect. I'm going to repeat that one. Everything that every person and every creature, that's snails, raccoons, alligators, everything that every creature does or does not do is at all times either constructive or non-constructive in effect. There's no other value measure for anything that is said or done other than constructive and non-constructive. in every area of existence.
Mm-hmm.
Every event is either constructive or non-constructive. Nothing in between. That's me saying that.
Yes.
This is according to the logic that is part of the laws, quote, laws of the known universe.
Yes, that's powerful.
Now, everything is either, every move that you make, walking across a room, is either going to be constructive or non-constructive. That's the effect that it's going to have.
Mm-hmm.
You're either going to get where you're going, or you might fall down getting there, all right? That's non-constructive if you fall and injure yourself.
Yes, sir.
Because that wasn't your purpose for going across the room, all right? You might have been going across the room because you spotted a chair that was more comfortable than the one that you're already in. But it didn't work out too well. Why? Because you didn't walk correctly. You have to walk correctly in order to get from one place to another.
Yeah, I like the way you focused in on that. Because it's an all-inclusive statement. It's either one thing or either another thing.
In between. That's where you get focused. When you get to the place you can choose between what's constructive and what's non-constructive, that is what you call super-constructive. I mean, that's right where everything should be.
Yeah.
Be able to tell the difference between something that's constructive and something that's non-constructive, and go for the thing that is always constructive.
Yes, sir.
In effect, every time. And you talking about code, that's code.
That's code. TalkTimeAtRadio.com is a 24/7 no-charge worldwide broadcasting facility with hosts delivering on various topics such as news, lifestyle, sports, law, health, wellness, religion, and politics. Now, here's a couple or three I'm going to mention. All in the Family with S. Yolanda Robinson. New Money is another one of the shows. And how about this one right here? Jazz Showcase. If you love jazz, and I do, that show is available to you also. All these shows, as a matter of fact, are an exclusive to TalkTameAtRadio.com. And all you have to do, because it is incumbent upon you to do this, is go to the TalkTameAtRadio.com homepage, and there's a list that says programs. Hit the program button, and these shows will come up. Give it a try. Give it a sample, as they say in the music industry, to check out the show and see if you would like to listen to the show, or what does the show have to say. It may be pertinent to you, it may not. But you won't know this unless you check it out. Just go to the TalkTameAtRadio.com homepage, and remember that Talktainment Radio is the way that radio should be heard. My name is Mr. Bobby. I am the co-host on the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller. And today's show, being the 24th of April, 2019, is about the Codebook, or in particular, focusing. Do you read the Codebook? Do you have the Codebook, which Mr. Fuller would discuss at the 45-minute mark thereabout? Do you have the Codebook? And if you do you read it? Do you stay focused? The last statement before we got into this was on page 1 near the bottom of the page. Either you are or either you aren't. We must stay focused. And if you've been listening to the program, one of the things that's been said throughout this program, this is what Mr. Fuller said. According to the code. He has said this several times. I was beginning to count it, but I lost count. According to the code. We got to stay focused on that. According to the code. That's what he's been saying. According to the code. That helps us to stay focused on defeating white supremacy. Let's go to the Gmails here. This comes from Victor Palmer. He doesn't mind if I call his name. He said, can you ask Mr. Fuller, is this an example of codifying words as tools, using words as scientific weapons? He says this. when you say depressed, what is depressing you? Or the root word of depress is to press and or press down. What is pressing you down? He says the answer is most likely the usual suspects and their global business and prison system of the system of racism, white supremacy, if you are classified as a non-white. What strategies under compensatory counter-racist logic through the use of counter-racist codes can victims of racism create to compensate for their mistreatment and subjugation in all areas of people activities, which includes education, economics, entertainment, law, labor, politics, religion, sex, and counter-war, Mr. Fuller?
You do the most constructive thing in every area of activity. Black people always ask, what can we do? What can we do? Well, what I've written in the code book is each and every minute of each and every day, and we've discussed this earlier just a few minutes ago, constructive, non-constructive. Be able to separate those two. Don't get the constructive activities mixed up with non-constructive activities. Be able to tell the difference between something that you're doing right this minute. If you're cursing somebody out, is that constructive? Is that constructive, yes or no? And what's the constructive effect? So you always go by what effect it has. Are you getting the effect that you want to have? And will that effect not be just what you wanted to have? Will it result in something constructive happening for everybody involved? Because once you do something constructive, everybody's going to be affected by constructive activity. When a house is built and the storms come and the rain comes, the cold comes, and somebody's built the house. And so people go into the house and it's warm in that house. Now, that had a constructive effect. Even though the house was built 20 years ago, never been occupied, it has a constructive effect on this particular day when the storm came, the snowstorm. And people went inside the house and the house was warm. And they immediately got warm. They felt the warmth. And then, rather than argue with each other like they were doing out there while the snow was falling, and it made them angry, and they turned on each other, which people have a tendency to do when they don't know what to do about a situation. They lash out at whoever's close to them. All right? So when they all went inside the house, they calmed down because the house was warm as toast. And the snowstorm was raging outside. But inside the house, everything was comfortable. There was comfortable furniture in there to sit down in. So now, everybody is talking to each other different from the way that they were talking when they were out there in the snowstorm, accusing each other of not bringing enough coats or whatever it was. And now they're caught in this snowstorm and don't know what to do about it. But they went in this house, and now they're warm, and now they're acting more correctly. They're acting more constructively. Why? Because their pain has been eased. That's why.
Okay.
Codification is about logic. One of the things that you do is follow the logic. Don't follow Neely Fuller. Don't follow any person. Follow the logic that came with the universe.
Yes, sir.
The universe was here before Neely Fuller. Don't get in the habit of getting drunk on a personality. Personalities come and go.
Okay.
Logic remains the same.
Alrighty. Here's a question here. It says, angry white females. Comes from George. He says this. Got one for you. It's becoming more and more prevalent these days with all the feminization crap that whites practice. Sometimes a white female will like a black male, but he doesn't want her, so he basically ignores her or keeps her in the friend zone. When this happens, the white female becomes furious because they feel entitled to our sex organs because we are prisoners of war. Once they are rejected, they proceed to get revenge on the black man for not wanting them. I try to avoid them, but there are too many of them to avoid all of the time. We all know how they blame their crimes on black men, on the black man, and lies to use us as a scapegoat to avoid punishment. So this is a very dangerous situation for the black males in America, KKK. Mr. Fuller, what does the code say about how to handle these tenuous situations?
Oh, you reveal what's going on, and you do that simply by, if the person is actually talking to you, ask them, is this constructive or is it non-constructive, ma'am? And always be courteous. Whatever she's doing, or whatever any person is doing, constructive, non-constructive, never deviate from that. Is this constructive? Put it in the form of a question. Don't accuse anybody of doing anything, because particularly a white person, because you're going to have a problem trying to prove it. Okay? But you can ask questions, and should, according to the code. Just say, is you want me to be with you sexually? Okay, is that my understanding? Put it in the form of a question. Is that what you're trying to get me to understand? Ma'am. All right, be courteous. Don't let anybody be more courteous than you in conversations. Okay? That's a part of the code.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want me to engage in sexual activity of some type with you? Kissing, hugging, sexual intercourse, what? Then you ask the next logical question. In order to accomplish what? In this system that we're in. What will that accomplish? And will it be constructive or non-constructive in effect? And if it's going to be constructive how? Now, I just thought of these questions right off the top of my head because I know the codified procedure, questions and answers. So you just figure out, according to what the person is saying, where is all this supposed to lead? Who is it going to benefit? Is it going to benefit everybody in a constructive manner in this system that we are given? Is it going to be a benefit? And if it's going to be a benefit, how? How is this going to be a benefit when it all plays out? Wow. Constructive, non-constructive. Always use those two terms. Focus on those 24/7. All day, every day. On the job, everywhere else. Constructive, non-constructive. Ask that foreman, hey, sir, can I ask a question? Yeah, Mac. What do you got to say? What's your question? Is this going to be constructive or non-constructive?
So that's what he would ask that woman. Is having sexual intercourse with you going to be constructive or non-constructive?
Is it going to have a constructive effect? So you always think about the effect, not so much what you're doing.
Okay.
You know, homosexuality and all like that. Is that constructive? Constructive? How? What is the ultimate goal? Everything has an ultimate goal. In order to accomplish what?
What?
And when you accomplish it, is it going to be something that's constructive, a great improvement over what we have ever had? Or is it going to be non-constructive? Something that's not an improvement.
Yeah.
Because there ain't no such thing as in between.
And with that, we have this caller. Go ahead, caller. You're on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Yes, good morning. My question for Mr. Fuller is, oftentimes when we're dealing in the area of labor, we are asked to give references, character references, professional references. On page 190 of the Codebook, under politics, you say, what is the question that you pose is, what is the correct statement to make when someone asks you to name someone who can speak in favor of your character? So my question is, how do we handle those situations when we are asked to produce those references?
Well, what does it say on page 190?
It says, the correct statement to make is, I know of no person whose character qualifies him or her to speak for or against my character.
Oh, well, everything on that page, I have it now. If use what will work. That's what makes it code. Code is an abstraction. In other words, no part of a code means anything unless it means something. And what it should mean is that it's something you can use, that when you use it, it works. Otherwise, it's not code, even though it's written in the code book. If it doesn't work, you don't use it. If you don't think it will work, you don't use it. But I have been asked that question, making in a reference. Someone asked me, name 3 people who know you very well. And that was in an interview for a job, a very important clearance for a job. So I had been told. And my response was, no one. And so the person, in asking me why did I give that kind of response, my response that did not go into depth. My response was, well, I can't really say who knows me very well, because if I tell you a name of someone who knows me very well, you may interview that person, and that person will say they don't know me very well at all. And now we have a contradiction. So the person that would know me very well, you would have to find out who that person is that knows me very well, and have them voluntarily say that they know me very well. But I don't know anyone who has told me that they know me very well, because I don't know myself very well. That was the way that I was getting ready to answer, because I was going to say, first of all, I have a name, Neely Fuller Jr., but I don't really know the history of that name, or how I got it. I don't know the origin of it. I don't really know myself, really. And I was going to go into detail about how racism brought that about, but they didn't pursue it. The person who was interviewing me, they just looked puzzled by my response. But I wasn't trying to cause the person to be puzzled. I was trying to get clarity and focus, because that's what the interview was supposed to be about, clarity and focus. And I was told that I couldn't make any false statements. So to say that I know 3 people very well, or 3 people know me very well, how deep is a well? I mean, even the words that were used. I was thinking about whoever made up this poem didn't really think it through. Name 3 people who know you very well? I mean, can you actually do that under oath when you may not know yourself very well? And how deep is a well? Just look at the words that are used. Words are very important. That's why I have, you can go to Produce Justice and get it, a word guide. Questions to ask about words that are kind of loose, you might say, if you want to use the word loose. So, yes, you can, in answer to your question, ma'am, you can do that, respond the way that it says on this page, or you can say, no, I don't think that will work in this particular situation. Well, if you don't think that it will work, then don't do that. But everything in the code book is just a basic guide, just a suggestion, just an opinion. It's not doctrinaire. It's something you just don't have to do. It's something you think about doing, and after you think about it, you use it if it will do what? If it will work to produce a constructive result. And that applies to anything that you say on your own, because a code is not just what Neely Fuller wrote. A code is just doing what works in the most constructive manner. That's all a code is supposed to be for victims of white supremacy, or for people who have correct intent anywhere on the planet, any time of day or night. A code is whatever you do that produces a constructive result. That's the way it ought to be. Okay. That's code.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question, ma'am. I have to ask you, Mr. Fuller, when you were speaking to that person, I'm going to guess that you said Clarence, so that would seem indicative that it had something to do with the military. If that is or was the case, rather, did you get military clearance or the clearance because you said the person looked rather confused?
Well, I was already on the job, and it wasn't in the military. It was on the job, and that was on the form. Name 3 people who know you very well. And I started to write down something, and I said, wait a minute. The question, all questions are valid, but I don't understand the question. Name 3 people who know you very well, or can you name 3 people who know you very well? You know, and my answer was no. What do you mean by well? I mean, how can you measure that? See, just that word well alone, that's what I mean by the importance of words. Mm-hmm. Know me very well. Know me how? Mm-hmm. And if they said, name 3 people who know that you have driven a car, I could probably do that. That's something very specific, correct? Yes. Yes, if they say, if I know 3 people who have actually was in a car that I was driving, then I could say that.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Jim Brown or Miss Helen Smith or Kamina Nkrumah or whatever, if they had been in the car or they had seen me drive a car, then I could say yes, all right. Or the driving instructor. I could name them if I knew their names. Whomever taught me how to drive a vehicle. Okay. Gave me a driving test. But name 3 people? Can you name 3 people who know you very well? Mm-hmm. Well, hey, all right. How?
All right. Well, since you were already on the job, as you just stated, but you did mention the word clearance, you needed, I guess, clearance. I'm just curious, were you able to proceed on to the next level of that job, or that was it?
The lady said she'd get back to me. She never did. Okay. But I understand she got back to a lot of people who I work with.
But she never got back to you?
No, but she and I ran into one of the people that I had worked with, and this person, it was a male. He told me, he said, this lady came to me and asked me a whole lot of questions about you, Fuller, and one of the questions she asked me, I said, well, what questions did she ask you? And she said, did I have any reason to believe that you were not loyal to the Constitution of the United States?
Whoa.
And now, the person that she asked that to, the person told me, he fell out laughing and said, you won't find anybody who talks about the Constitution more than Neely Fuller.
Oh, okay.
Neely Fuller is always talking about the 5th and the 14th Amendment. Mm-hmm. And that you should always use it. Okay. Because that's what it's there for. You can't say that you're supporting the Constitution of the United States unless you're using it. That's the only way you can support anything. Is that you got to be hands-on. Okay. So I use that all the time. I always told people. Now, what is the 5th and 14th Amendment? It means helping to produce justice. That's the way it's written. All right? Because it says you get due process. That's the 5th Amendment. Meaning you go about doing everything the correct way. That's what due process is. And the 14th Amendment is equal protection of the laws. Everybody should be treated the same, which means nobody's supposed to be mistreated. That's my interpretation of the 5th and 14th Amendment. You don't mistreat anybody. Well, that's justice. So why would I be against justice? That's the one thing that I'm absolutely for. I don't care who writes it. Maybe if anybody says, hey, are you for justice? I say, well, whether I'm for it or against it, I'm supposed to be. And I'm going to say that I'm for it because it helps me. Yeah. Justice helps me. It doesn't work against me.
I wonder if somebody has sent a copy of the 5th and 14th Amendments to 1600.
They're very short.
Yes. Yes. To 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Anyway, TalkTameItRadio.com. We go where you go. Download the TalkTameItRadio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. My name is Mr. Bobby. I am the co-host on the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller. Today being the 24th of April, 2019, we are discussing the Codebook, and in particular, we're focusing in on being focused. And if you listen to the program, there's been many examples that Mr. Fuller has given, and one of the things that's been outstanding is according to the code. That's at least 7 or 8 times he has mentioned that, to stay focused on the according to the code. And it is at this particular time that we're going to have Mr. Neely Fuller focus in on his code book. Mr. Fuller?
You can get the book by going to the revised, expanded 2016 edition by going to producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com. Producejustice.com. And what will come up on the screen is a brief description of the basic textbook and an additional word guide. There's also the 1984 edition. Some people have asked for that. I originally did not have it at that website, producejustice.com, but some people were asking for it because they said they understood the 1984 edition better than they did any of the writings that are in the 2016 edition. I don't know why that is, but evidently I might have been a better writer in 1984 than I was in 2016. But so be it. So I put it back up there. But my recommendation is the revised expanded edition, because it covers everything that's in the 1984 edition. Most of the things written differently in some instances, but pretty close to being the same thing, and a lot more material, a lot more examples, etc., plus the additional word guide that's always there. That's also there, rather. And that's showing you how to use words, how not to use words, what questions to ask people more than anything when other people use certain words, like the word Africa, the word America. These are common words. Sometimes they're just thrown around loosely. These words shouldn't be loose. No word should be loose, what I call quote-unquote loose, meaning vague definitions. Everything should be something that you understand, you know what you're talking about, and you know what the other person is talking about when they use the words, so that you can do what? Have focus and clarity in your conversation. This is something that's absolutely needed each and every day. You have communications breakdown on account of there's not enough focus, not enough clarity. And the way to get focus and clarity is through the process of what? Questions and answers. How many questions and answers? Endless questions and answers until you finally get the last question answered. Don't leave out any questions. No question should go unanswered, because there's an answer to every question, even if the answer is I don't know. And so go to producejustice.com. Producejustice.com.
Okay.
That's how to order the book.
Okay. All righty. Let's go to the phone lines. Caller, you're on with Mr. Fuller here for a couple of minutes. Go ahead, caller.
Yes, Mr. Fuller. You've stated a bunch of times on this show that the system of white supremacy is the strongest religion on the planet. And I was thinking about in New Zealand, they had a gunman had walked in there and he killed 50 people in a mosque. And so they asked a Muslim American woman here in this country, said, well, what do you think about that man walking into that mosque, shooting up all those people, killing all those people? And she said, I'm not going to let no shooters stop me from worshiping. She said that I'm not going to let no shooters stop me from worshiping God. And I thought to myself, Mr. Fuller, well, if you're worshiping God, then why did he allow this man to come in there and shoot up your place? And here's the point I'm trying to make, Mr. Fuller. People who put on suits and ties or going to mosque and get on their knees and put their face on the ground, they just think that they're worshiping God because somebody told them that they're worshiping God if they do those things. So what is your comment about that?
It's in the textbook about religion. You ask 3 questions about anybody's religion, regardless of what the religion is. That's it. Just 3 questions. Question number 1. What is the name of your religion? Question number 2. After you get the name of a person's religion, after they answer the question, you want to get the name straight first. 2. What does your religion, ma'am or sir, require you to do in all areas of activity? And then you name the 9 areas. What does your religion require you to do in economics? What does your religion require you to do in education? What does your religion require you to do in entertainment, labor, law, politics, other people's religions, sex, and war? Because religions have rules. Most religions, I never heard of a religion yet that didn't have some type of outline, some type of religion, some type of doctrine, some type of list of do's and don'ts about something. Otherwise, how can it be a religion? A religion, by definition, is a strong belief backed up by action, according to the code, according to what I have written. That's my definition. Hello?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Yes, I hear buzzing.
Okay, wait a minute. Okay, go ahead.
Yes. So, those 3 things. Otherwise, you're going to get into a long, drawn-out argument, most likely, that's going nowhere. Always, and you expect people to live up to their religion. That's their religion. That's something they chose. So you don't argue about other people's religion. People's religion can be whatever they choose it to be, and it should be that way. But all you do is just ask questions. What does your religion require you to do? Now, the 3rd question is, what does your religion require you to do when you interact with me as an individual? 1, 2, 3. What's the name of your religion? What does your religion require you to do in the 9 areas of activity? And what does your religion require you to do when you see me coming? Does it require you to convert me? Does it require you to throw something at me? Or to throw a bomb at me? Or when you see me practicing my religion, does your religion require you to oppose my religion or to embrace it? What does your religion require you to do in all of the areas of activity? Because at the end of the day, it always comes down to how people are going to interact with each other. How you interact with your Creator, that's your business. I'm not going to tell you how to interact with your Creator because I really don't know. And I really don't have any business asserting that type of authority unless I am the Creator. You choose how you communicate with the Creator. That's your business. What I want to know is how you're going to interact with me. And that's all I want to know about your religion. And I'm not going to condemn it according to the code. I can't. I'm not qualified except condemn one religion because it affects me directly. And that's the religion that you name according to the code, the religion of white supremacy. Now that religion is designed to do harm to me. That's what it's for. And I am absolutely opposed to the religion of white supremacy.
Got it. All righty. When you hear the music, you know what happens. Thank you, Mr. Fuller.
Thank you for inviting me.